First, I would like to invite Steve Tedzinski up, who has a special announcement to make.
I'm sure that a lot of you, at least on the SMPTE side, knew Walt Bundy. I'm saying that in past tense because he passed away in February. Yeah. His wife, Barb McGuigan, sent me a fairly lengthy note, and I just want to read 2 paragraphs out of that. So this is Barb speaking. It is with great sadness that I must inform you the love of my life, Walt, passed away suddenly on February 20th, 2019. We had just finished a morning walk at one of his favorite places, Laurel Acres in Mount Laurel. Walt was happy and smiling and planning on going to visit our niece later that day. He wanted to sit down and rest for a few minutes and watch the ducks in the pond when his heart just stopped. Unfortunately, he did not have any pain or suffer. And I'll skip down to one of the later paragraphs. So once again, Barb speaking. I want to thank all of the SMPTE members for treating Walt so nicely and looking out for him as his health declined. We truly appreciated all of your help and patience. Walt loved serving as manager and wanted to become more actively involved since he had been feeling better. He's in heaven now, probably enlightening all those that are interested in his days in television. So, that's it.
Thank you.
I'll send out a longer email tomorrow.
All right, thank you. So, some, as they say on PTI, a melancholy happy trails.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on, I'd like to invite Chuck Deal to come up. He is our membership director, and to talk a little bit about SMPTE membership. And one of the great things about having the meeting here is all of these future engineers that can take the place of all of us old guys. So, Chuck?
Yeah, come on. We mean old guys.
Thanks. Welcome, everybody. So tonight I've just brought up the SMPTE website. For all the people that don't know about SMPTE, we're about making standards in our industry. But speaking from a personal experience, joining SMPTE is about networking. It helped my career immensely. You learn about technologies such as tonight. If you take a moment and you're not a member, please visit the site. There's an area where you can look over the different memberships. There's quite a few of them. Used to only be 1 or 2. But we have individual associate, individual student. It's quite inexpensive. You get access to the PDFs. You get access to technology on our website. You can get, if you're as high as the individual professional, you can get the printed journal. If you're just an associate, you can get the PDF that's emailed to you monthly with all the white papers. So please take a moment if you're interested. Join the site. We have monthly meetings at all the stations. All the stations are QVC, PCN out in Harrisburg. You can get to network and you can find employment. So thank you.
All right, so I'm going to invite our special guest tonight, Pete Putnam. I won't read the bio. It was in the notice, but Pete is always an entertaining presentation, and we look forward to this every year. So we actually had him in December because we never scheduled him last year until until it was way at the end. So by that time, his talk was a little dated. So this one is very fresh, only 3 weeks old since being at NAB. So I'll turn it over to Pete.
Good, all right. So make sure we have audio. All righty. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to the monthly meeting of the Society of Meeting in Small Rooms. This is a little large for this group, but we've done this in the past. I want to make sure we have audio here. I didn't hear audio when this last clip ran, so I'm going to get things started, and hopefully...
We're good.
Okay. Well, I hope I can hear it out here. Nope. We do not have audio. We don't have audio.
Not again.
We don't have it locally in the room, which is kind of important.
No, he's not. Not here either.
What would a SMPTE meeting be without something like this happening, right?
It's not like we don't have a couple of speakers.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me okay? That's the number one question.
27, 28.
Yep, we should be hot. Would you like me to give you a little music or something?
Yeah, just please give me something. Yeah.
I will do that.
The volume's up, all that.
Okay.
What was that?
That was probably my computer, but I'm not hearing it in the room.
Sound like you're plugged in then. If I'm hearing it out of here,
But I'm not hearing it in the
Hearing
room.
it in the studio, showing us.
Sean is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, little music.
Yeah, that's why.
Rather do it.
Rojo was a man who thought he was a loner, but he knew it couldn't last. Georgia left
Good, we're hot.
Right?
That's our album. It'll be released in a week. This is a sneak preview of it.
What's the name of your group?
What's
Say it
that?
Again, one more time, please.
Sure, happy to do it.
He's testing.
You want some more music again? Here we go.
Anything? Yeah.
We good?
Rojo was a man who thought he was a loner, but he knew it couldn't last. Georgia left his home in Tucson, Arizona for
I decided my life wasn't interesting enough. At age 59, I joined a rock and roll band. That's a true story. And that's me playing keyboards in the background there. So, enough of that funny stuff. Let's get on with the program.
CES presents this program in color.
You're entering a dimension of floor space and not enough time. A dimension of crowded hallways, overpriced food, and long lines for cabs. A dimension of prominent misspelled signs, of powered massage chairs, large pink rabbits, wireless beer, the United States Postal Service, Puppy Homie. A dimension of headphones in every style and color, of adults behaving like children, and some really good barbecue. There's a signpost up ahead. It reads, Central Hall, booth 16,600 to 16,790. Ah, never mind. You've entered the CES zone. Yes, it's once again time to take a wild and wacky trip through the world of high-tech pink rabbits, wireless beer, reclining chairs, maybe some interesting things like televisions and video encoders and all that. So we're going to move through quickly here. The theme here this year is look out. The future is behind you and it is closing fast. Some interesting things I found online. Did you know that Americans are becoming less reliant on physical currency? In fact, I ate at a restaurant last night where it said credit cards only. Roughly 3 in 10 U.S. adults say they make no purchases using cash during a typical week.
And the share that say that all or most all their weekly purchases are made with cash has decreased from 24% to 18%. Think about that. As more Americans go cash-free, a growing share of the public is comfortable not carrying any money. 53% of Americans say they try to make sure they always have cash on hand just in case they need it, but that's a 7 percentage point decline from the 60%, which is one reason I don't feel unsafe walking in New York anymore. A guy tries to mug me, it's like, I don't have any money. Who has money anymore? Apple, back in January, said, guess what? The luster is off. Demand for iPhones is decreasing. Investors are saying Apple's losing a lot of its punch, which is why their stock price came down. Apple CTO Tim Cook released that information, this is back in January, saying that their revenue for the October-December quarter will fall well below the company's earlier projections, and acknowledged consumers in other markets aren't buying as many of the latest iPhones as they anticipated, a factor that could stem from a starting price of $1,000 for an iPhone. I have a smartphone. I bought it in January of 2014. It still works. I'm not paying $1,000 for a phone. That's crazy. Well, nearly 3.5 years after its release, Windows 10 last month finally passed Windows 7 as the most popular operating system on the planet. It jumped by 1.1 percentage points in user share in December, climbing to 39.2% of all personal computers, 45% of all PCs running Windows. In the meantime, Windows 7 lost 2 percentage points last month, 4 times the loss of November and the largest one-month decline in over a year. It's only on 37% of all personal computers and 42% of all Windows PCs. And my question is, how is it still on 37% of all those computers? 5G, who's heard about 5G? Who actually knows what's going on with 5G? How much of it is marketing hype? How much of it is BS? Well, it is. There are no networks, no devices that can transmit or receive 5G, but they're all running around claiming 5G is here, and it's basically an emperor who has no clothes. Now, people always get upset when you migrate from one major wireless technology to another, but in this case, there's going to be about 18 to 24 months between the start of 5G, this is again back in January and February, till they have the time to build out the networks. And what they're not telling you is that you really have to be using microwave and millimeter wave frequencies to get the bandwidth that they're claiming you'll get. But doesn't stop people from the press and vendors saying, oh, 5G this, 5G that. Wow, isn't this amazing? Samsung showed 5G phones at CES. Can you buy them? No. D-Link showed a 5G router. I said, great. That links to 5 gig and 2.5 gig. Yep, well, I can put that down in the basement. No, you can't. First floor? Nope. Second floor? Nope. Got to put it up on the roof. And then it might not work. Facebook decided there are not enough companies making voice recognition assistants, so they're going to come out with one of their own. Maybe it's going to be called Marky. I don't know. The company announced a partnership with Intel, entering a stiff race to develop a more specialized and powerful artificial intelligence chip. Facebook's apparently given themselves a tall task. So, a niche AI chip, and this is where all these guys are moving, building their own semiconductors now, and some other interesting stuff, could aid in their content moderation battle. So, I mean, they're up against Google, they're up against Samsung's Bixby, obviously Alexa. You know, that's going to be like 6 or 7 of these voice recognition assistants. MIT guys, who never have enough time on their hands, had developed a sub-terahertz radiation system that will steer driverless cars when traditional methods fail. So, sub-terahertz wavelengths, which are between microwave and infrared radiation in the microwave spectrum, can be detected through fog and dust clouds. So, a sub-terahertz system will send an additional signal through a transmitter. The receiver will measure the absorption or reflection of the rebounding sub-terahertz wavelengths, sending a secondary signal to a processor to create an image of the object. By the way, this is the way police radar works. It's exactly the same thing, just at a much higher frequency. Microsoft is also working on a folding tablet. You've probably heard about the Samsung. You've probably heard that a lot of the units that went out to reviewers broke, which is not a good thing to send to reviewers. But they're working on one, a dual-screen Windows 10 device with a patent that suggests they could be developing a laptop with a foldable screen. The patent says bendable device with display and movable connection with body. I think they might be building a foldable display. So, they state the folding screen technology can be used for handheld devices, laptops, wearable devices, other consumer electronics, and gives details on the inner workings of a flexible display stack for a multi-layered device, including the use of magnets, grooves, or studs in a display layer to reduce stress and make it easier to hold in your hands. Craig Moffett, he's a fly in the ointment. He's a pain in the neck for the pay TV industry. Well, he's at it again. Pay TV industry hasn't reached the point yet where it completely gives up on video, but he said if some of the smaller companies did it, it really wouldn't hurt them. So in one of his new research reports back in March, he said, the big guys, the Comcasts and Charters and all that, they're not at the point of abandoning video, but a lot of smaller companies are seeing their subscriber base evaporate because of video streaming. So while Comcast and Charter are tracking at about 1.7, 1.4% annually, Cable One is at 10.3, Mediacom's is 5.5. Cable One told Moffett Nathanson they lose money on every individual subscriber now. That's a pretty neat trick. So believe it or not, if somebody calls them and says, well, I don't want to pay the bill, they say, fine, just turn it off. We'll tell you where to get video streaming. You're actually costing us money. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, smartphones are eating the consumer tech world. 59% of all global consumer tech spending last year was on smartphones. There's more smartphones out there than there are people in the world, believe it or not. They're the computing device of choice. We spend more time online using mobiles than computers. More searches are performed on mobile devices than computers, and Android is now the dominant operating system, which is one of the reasons Apple's not doing so well with smartphones. And I'm sure this will not come as a surprise to anybody, but Samsung is going to stop making Blu-ray players. Why? Because video streaming is killing optical disc. And we can all see this coming. And if Samsung's not doing it, you can be pretty sure then quick order, LG will stop doing it. And Sony eventually, and Panasonic, which just came out with a very expensive high-end player, will stop doing it. I mean, how many people here have a Blu-ray player? Okay, and how many people watch it maybe once or twice a month? Yeah, see, everybody who uses it for streaming, who just streams through the TV. Who's forgotten that they had a Blu-ray player, which I did the other night when I was reaching around to fix a network cable. I'm like, what's this stupid thing? Oh, that's a Blu-ray player. So some things to think about.
Mine for high def pure audio. I don't use it for
Some things to think about here. What's in your wallet, if you even carry a wallet? Apple's not all powerful and all dominant. We all thought they were. How many years has Windows 7 been around? Really? My first Windows 7 computer was 2009. 5G wireless capabilities are being oversold to the public, and boy, are they being oversold. It's going to be a long time before that's anywhere near ready for prime time. Now we're going to have 5 different voice assistants. So Siri and Bixby and Hey Google and Marky and I don't know. Let's come up with some other crazy names. Will autonomous vehicles eventually have better eyesight than humans, especially when it's foggy out? How long before we have crumple up mobile devices? Well, let me see my phone here. I smashed it into my pocket. Oop, dead. What does the future of pay television look like? We kind of see where it's all going. Streaming is killing optical discs. Is cable television next? So, CES, alternately called the Chinese Electronics Show, the Cheap Electronics Show. It really is becoming a Chinese electronics show. I mean, if you go to the Upper and Lower South Hall, who here was at CES this year? Anybody? Well, if you go to the Upper and Lower South Hall, it's pretty much all Chinese trading companies now. And you'll see later in the show, it's a running gag, it's been going on for 10 years. The US Postal Service always sets up in the middle of them. And I've never been able to figure out why, because none of those people will ever use that service. So, CES 2019 review. They claimed 182,198 people attended the show. That might have been everybody walking by outside the building, planes flying overhead, cars on the street. More than 4,500 exhibitors at the LVCC, Sands, and other sites. 2.9 million square feet. By the way, they're building an addition on the LVCC Convention Center. They knocked down the old Riviera. They're going to build right out to Las Vegas Boulevard. They will have over 4 million square feet of exhibit space. And it'll take you approximately 13 days to get from the South Hall out to Las Vegas Boulevard. 224,000 views of CES videos on Facebook. 1 million uses of these 2 hashtags. 37,000 images from the show with the hashtag. Security is still tighter than Fort Knox. They really make it difficult for you to get in here if you're carrying anything, a camera, a bag and all. But at NAB, it's like, go ahead, walk in the building, we don't care. So people were talking about artificial intelligence, connected homes, offices, rooms, and kitchens. 8K TV, that's a thing. There's even an 8K TV association now, believe it or not. Micro LEDs, mini LED backlights, 5G wireless, 60 gig Wi-Fi, super widescreen gaming monitors, and augmented reality. Not quite as interesting. Internet of Things, drones, facial recognition, virtual and augmented reality, robots, and autonomous cars. And nobody was talking about smartphones, tablets, 4K TV, Ultra HD Blu-ray, laser TV projection, and streaming media. No one. So there are really more concept demos this year. And this is the first time I've seen it at the show. It's kind of turning into a World's Fair. It's sort of turning into, they used to have these showcases where you'd walk in and say, here's the kitchen of tomorrow, the living room of tomorrow, here's the garage of tomorrow, here's your backyard of tomorrow. It's all connected on the internet. A few are gadget demos. I'm a gearhead. Derek's a gearhead. A bunch of us are gearheads. We don't want to talk about software. We want to see a product. We want to see an 8K smartphone. It'd be kind of crazy to build that, but I'd like to see it. So the feel was really more like a World's Fair or a tech museum. So the trends, electronics are cheap across the board and disposable. They are disposable. We were having this conversation earlier. People not buying really fancy lenses for cameras, they're just buying cheaper cameras, and when they break, they just buy another one because they are cheap enough. The exceptions, cars, white goods. There's actually more profit. If you are a company selling consumer electronics, there's more profit in selling washers, dryers, and refrigerators than there is in televisions. Way more profit. 8K TVs, which are still very expensive, and yes, they're out there, and massage chairs. If anything, they're going up in price. I had a very nice demo of one, and when they said to me, if you buy it, it's normally $10,000, but if you buy it at the show, it's $8,400 with free shipping. It's like, thank you very much, goodbye. So the next generations of electronics we're seeing really aren't that much different in performance than what we saw last year or the year before. The improvement is incremental. How about NAB? Well, the attendance was down 11.5% from 2017, down to 91,000. There was more emphasis on operating expenses as opposed to capital expenses. Companies are not looking to spend a lot of money on hardware. They're just trying to figure out how to maintain what they've got and run it as cheaply as they can. Lots of software demos, less hardware, and smaller booths. 4K, Ultra HD, and 8K video and codecs were hot topics. ATSC3 is rolling out across the US. There's at least 20 stations on the air, and there was a big announcement at the show that they're going to get TV stations going in the top 40 markets sometime in the next 2 or 3 years. And no drones and action cameras. Boy, I used to go to NAB every year, and you couldn't even walk in the South Hall. It was like a horn of an angry horde of hornets down there with all the. I couldn't find him this year. Couldn't see him. And where'd all the virtual reality and augmented reality exhibits go? 3 years ago, they took up the entire North Hall. Then they took up part of the North Hall. Then last year they had a few booths. Couldn't find him this year. So, plenty of autonomous cars were shown in Vegas. Okay, this thing looks like a toaster that was built into a car. Most of them are really boxy, not particularly attractive, although you're not really supposed to drive this. A bunch of people get in this thing, it takes you to where you're supposed to go and you get out, and you've probably been lightly toasted along the way. Maybe they hand you a complimentary bagel. Emphasis is on maximum seating space and comfort. The displays are built into windows, doors, and even the windshield has a display in it. So no matter where you look, you're looking at a display. So you're not really sure if you're looking outside the vehicle or a virtual reconstruction of the outside of the vehicle. It's kind of like riding the Las Vegas monorail. There's an autonomous vehicle minus the wheels made by Eisen. There's Bosch's equally ugly Internet of Things vehicle over on the right. Luxoft built a cab and forgot to put the wheels on that. The people got in there and sat there for a while and realized it wasn't going to actually go anywhere, and then they kind of walked out muttering. Samsung built a car and forgot to put a body on it to show off their smart dashboard. Hyundai built the bubble vehicle. Now that's just silly, okay? But that's a Cushman, I'm telling you. Cushman used to make those little three-wheel things. They had them at the golf courts. So now Pioneer built one of these, and the reason they did it is they put like a 600-700 watt audio system in it with like, I don't know how many speakers, complete surround sound audio. So when you hit the ignition and turn the audio on, the car just blows apart. Now, here's an autonomous helicopter. Okay, they showed this as a prototype last year. It's really a thing. I'll show you a video clip of it. Obviously modeled after the helicopters that were in Avatar. Remember that? I'm not sure I'd want to get into an autonomous helicopter, would you? Furrion managed to get this yacht in North Hall. Now, if you look up at the top, you'll see there's a couple of people. I have a laser pointer here. Way up at the top there. I don't know how they got that in there. That's actually bigger than the doors. They must have disassembled part of the building, but John Deere, not to be outdone, drove that thing into the lower hall. And I mean, you can see the stairwell there. You can easily have 3 people go up that stairwell at the same time. The point is both these things can be run totally automated. The thing on the bottom, I'm not sure I'd want to be out in the field if that thing went a little berserko, though. Somebody hacked into it. Here's an interesting car. Byton showed a full-sized video dashboard, so there's no gauges in here. All the gauges are virtual. They're electronic gauges. Just a ton of user-selectable screens. So while you're zipping down the highway, it's like, do I want this one? I want this one. Do I want this one? Crash. Secondary displays built into the steering wheel, as if you didn't have enough displays. There's another one right in your hands to stare at. Could this possibly be distracting? I wonder. Maybe not as distracting as this.
Like a smartphone. You can use it like a smartphone so that every customer already knows how to control the system. So it's much more easier to do it. You can scroll through lists. If you do a long press on a list item, something happens, you get options. You can store it on the lower screen. You can build your own favorites menu there. You just take the icon, then the whole menu comes up to the upper screen. You can place it here, and if it's not already, it's already saved. So we have to search for another. I hope it will work with this one. So you take it, put it there, and then it's here. The whole lower screen changes to an input device. If you want to input text, you can have the keyboard over there. Type in like you're used to. You can also use the swipe gesture. Or you can do handwriting recognition. So just for one character. Or you can write like on paper. Or you can do the handwriting recognition. Just one spot. San Francisco. And it's very easy to do this.
And now it's looking for San Francisco.
Yeah.
So you just wrote one character right on top of the next.
Yes.
That's pretty smart. Now, it's a public service for me to remind you that when you're going 60 miles an hour, you're traveling 88 feet per second. Just keep that in mind when you have that kind of dash to play with. Here's a car that watches you while you're driving. Okay, that's kind of creepy. This is something built by NVIDIA. This is in their pilot car. It's not actually a car you can buy, it's a prototype. So it watches your face to see if you're distracted or drowsy. The car will then alert you to watch the road, wake up, and you can actually program it to the most annoying voice you can think of. What are you doing? Wake up, watch the road. It's basically an electronic backseat driver, except it's in the front seat.
You no longer need a wife.
Careful there, I wasn't gonna go there. NVIDIA is still working on, are we there yet? I have to go to the bathroom and I need a drink of water. Televisions, that's right. That's the main reason I started going to CES all these years ago. Were there televisions at CES? Well, there were. Remember those? There were plenty of them out for inspection. Really nothing in the way of new tech we haven't seen before, except for all those 8K TVs. Believe it or not, there were over a dozen brands of 8K TVs shown at CES. So 55 inches is now considered to be a small TV screen. It wasn't that long ago that 42 inches was considered to be a big TV screen. How many people have a 55-inch TV or larger here? Okay, you're sort of in the minority because there's more and more people buying them. 65 inches and up is where the action is, and this is where you're going to see the 8K TVs come into the market at this screen size. And we also saw 70, 75, 80, 85, 88, and 98-inch models shown. Now we're getting to the point where the TV will actually be one wall of a room, or if you live in San Francisco, one wall of your house. And they are certainly getting larger. So, according to IHS Markit, in December of last year, the average TV unit shipment size increased more than any previous quarter. Global shipments of 60-inch and larger TVs increased more than 40% year over year. That's an astounding increase. Now keep in mind that the total market is about 200 to 220 million TVs shipped in a year. So to have 40% growth, it's pretty impressive. Prices fell to new lows for 65 and 75-inch sizes. They're cheap. They're basically disposable items. Like George Foreman says in those commercials, when the invention commercials, Pete, what kind of a TV should I buy? I basically say, buy whatever you want, and if you don't like it, throw it away at the end of the year, because it's not going to be worth anything. They're so cheap now. So most of the large TVs are 4K. How many people have a 4K set here? And what might not have even been what you wanted to buy, but it didn't matter. It was like, I want to buy a 55-inch TV. Well, all we have is 4K. That's it. So who's got 8K? Well, LG showed a 75-inch 8K LCD with their nanocell technology, which is basically just a filter to take out the color yellow and improve the color rendition. LG also showed an 88-inch 8K OLED. You can buy this. I don't have the price on it yet. I assume it's a substantial portion of a down payment on a house. Sony showed 85-inch and 98-inch LCD TVs. They also sell the LG OLED panels. They make their own TVs, which they sell, or they actually handle the processing electronics, but they're using LG panels. Sharp showed 60-inch, 70-inch, and 80-inch 8K LCD TVs. Wait a minute, Sharp, didn't they go bankrupt? They're back in the TV business? Well, not immediately. Part of the problem is that the Sharp brand name in the US is licensed to a company called Hisense. Sharp is owned 66% by Han Hai, otherwise known as Foxconn. They make a lot of the Apple stuff. But since Hisense has that name to use until, I think, 2021, in North America, South America, except Brazil, Sharp can't actually sell a TV with their own name, which is kind of an odd thing. But when they were bankrupt, they needed money. So that license may be rescinded or it may be bought back. At the end of 2020, they'll get it back anyway. And they want to get into the premium TV business. So premium TV now is 8K TV. 4K is not premium anymore. 4K is cheap. 4K is Kmart stuff. 8K is where the money is. And they also make an 8K camera, they make 8K storage, and they make an 8K nonlinear editing system. They have an entire 8K ecosystem ready to go. Samsung showed a 4K to 8K up conversion demo. So to prove to people that, why would I buy an 8K TV? There's no content. It doesn't matter. Whatever you feed into it, we can scale it up to 8K and it'll look good. It wasn't perfect in this demo, but then I saw another one at NAB with Astro that was a lot better. Conca has a 75-inch 8K LCD with HDR. That's a Chinese brand you'll never see in this country. Hisense you probably heard of. They do sell in this country. They had their 8K ULED TV, 5,000 zones of local dimming. So, here's Sharp. They've got an 8K SLR, okay? Already, you can buy it. It is the the 8C60B, I think. It's going to be about $5,000. A little pricey, but it's 8K. So, I'm sorry, the 8C30A was launched in NAB, Micro Four Thirds 8K sensor. It records 4320p 30, so it can only do 8K at 30 frames a second. And it can do 1080p 60, that should be not 160p, 1080p 60 with HEVC compression. It's got one UHS-2 SD card slot, 5-inch flip-out full HD display for viewing, HDMI 2.0 port, and the MSRP about $4,500. So, if you want to be the first on your block to have an 8K DSLR, this is your product. Some fun things you can do with 8K cameras. Panasonic showed something called a region of interest camera at NAB. This is a concept that NHK showed years ago. NHK's been doing 8K broadcasts for almost 8 years now. You can cover an entire football game with 2 8K cameras, one on either side of the field, and you can take any 2K segment you want out of that dynamically. So you basically have a 32 camera virtual switcher using 2 fixed 8K cameras. So they didn't do that complicated at a setup here, but you could take any 4 different full HD slices simultaneously and switch and dissolve between them and mix between them off an 8K camera, which is pretty impressive. So the idea is that you just set up one camera and cover the entire studio. I realize I'm going to get the news people in trouble. And then you just select all these presets for everything you want in the studio, and then you just switch between those. The camera never moves. And here's what it looks like in action. So that's using the new Panasonic global sensor, which is designed to eliminate motion blur, which is a real problem when you get these larger sensors. 33 megapixels in one frame of video. And you can see, you've been at NAB before, you know, they bring the models in and they walk around, play golf, shoot croquet, whatever they do. But here we are, we're just cutting between each of the 4 different views. And the cameras, one of the cameras is automatically tracking, which is another cool thing. So it's getting to the point where you'll have one camera person in the studio, and maybe you won't even have anybody in the studio running a camera. It'll just all be in control, whatever control looks like in the future. Skyworth brought this out. This is a dual cell LCD. It's actually 2 panels sandwiched together. Why would you do that? Well, the first panel gives you all your pixels and all your color. Second panel, which is precisely registered, we hope, gives you a much deeper black level, higher contrast, because it cuts down on the low grays that you see, which is so typical of an LCD. So one's full color with HDR, the other's a monochromatic light shutter. The backlight is a full array mini LED. You get really deep black levels and high contrast. It's not really a new idea. Panasonic did this 2017 with a 31.5-inch monitor, and it's now the newest Sony LCD high-end monitor. It sells for about $40,000. It's using 2 of the Panasonic panels this way. This is LG's roll-up TV. So I didn't know there was really a need for this, but OLEDs are flexible enough that you can actually put them on a roller, roll them up like a screen, and then roll them down. Except this, instead of coming down from the ceiling, it's coming up from the floor. So they're going to bring this to market at some point. They really made a big deal of it at the show. 3 positions, completely obscured, up about 20%. 20%, it shows you static displays, weather, temperature, and the date. And then you completely roll it up for viewing. There's a little X brace in the back that holds the screen rigid. So in the video, they show some guy living in a really high townhouse with glass walls. So apparently that's the criteria is you have to have glass walls so your TV doesn't obstruct the view. And here's what it looks like in action. I did show this last year, the prototype, but it actually is going to come to market. I don't have a price on it yet. When you're all done, you hit the remote and you roll it down. So I see lots of potential for mischief there. Somebody's watching TV, come in the room, you hit the remote and walk out. And wait, I was just watching that. Now, you can make LCDs and OLEDs in any size and shape that you want. So, this is really neat. This is a 32 by 9, 49-inch augmented reality LCD gaming monitor. It supports high dynamic range. It has quantum dot technology to give you those really bright, brilliant whites and bursty colors. It'll do 120 hertz refresh rate, which is very important to people that do gaming. It meets the VESA, Video Electronic Standard Association, their HDR 1000 specification. The resolution is dual quad HD, so it's 5120 by 1440 pixels. And what some people have done is actually combine 3 of these to wrap the TV completely around them. One HDMI connection 2.0 or 2 DisplayPort 1.3s, a USB 3 and a headphone jack. And you'll never leave your desk. You'll probably die there playing this thing. And we can make them as large as you want. Okay, so here is a 8K video wall at NAB, fine pitch, less than 2 millimeter. This is mini LED. Mini LEDs down to about 100 micrometers. So the new benchmark for fine pitch is 0.7. That's as fine as we've gotten so far. 1.2 millimeters is more common, and we're now starting to see curved LED substrates in frames. So we can actually take an LED and we can curve that too, an LED wall. And there it is. Not much of a curve, it's a very gentle curve, but it's a concept. Because this is made out of separate tiles. And the tiles aren't particularly large, but if they make the tiles smaller, then of course you can increase the amount of bend. Now, who remembers 3D TV? Who actually liked 3D TV? Okay. Stream TV networks apparently never got the memo. They're still showing it. This is a 65-inch 8K LCD monitor with auto stereo. What does auto stereo mean? That used to be something you listen to in the car, but auto stereo means that you don't need glasses to see it. So what happens is parallax barriers are built into the TV, so depending on where you stand, your left eye sees one view, your right eye sees the other, and you get a stereo effect. So that didn't work so great with full HD because every time you put those barriers in, you cut down the resolution. 4K was better. Well, as it turns out, 8K is actually pretty good for that because then each view for each eye is at least full HD or better resolution. The fast refresh rate minimizes any flicker artifacts. They also showed a 32-inch 8K 3D gaming monitor, a 10-inch 8K 3D tablet, and a 3D smartphone. That one I kind of drew the line at, okay? Because I mean, what are you going to go like? I shouldn't make fun of them. They work so hard on this, but it's just sometimes you see things and you, okay. TCL apparently has not learned yet that everybody stopped making curved televisions because the only advantage of a curved TV is what? It's curved. They create glare. If you ever had a curved TV in your house and you have anything that's an incident light source, no matter where you move in the room, you'll see it somewhere on that screen. But not TCL. They showcased a 65-inch Ultra HD model with quantum dots, HDR, wide color gamut. Curved screens really are more popular and practical for gaming computers. But now that I'm talking about, that's a real curved screen. That 49-inch thing I showed you earlier. That's somebody sitting this close to the screen and it's filling their field of view. So, mini and micro LED, what's the difference? Well, a lot of these guys said to me, look at our micro LED display. Well, there aren't any. There's only one prototype that's been shown so far. These are all minis. They're impressive. They're using LED arrays that are 100 micrometers or larger. Most of them are using things in the 8.4 millimeter, 9 millimeter, 10 millimeter. And then you have these immense backlights providing more zones of dimming to improve black levels and contrast. Well, with an LED, there's no LCD panel to light up. You're looking at the source of light. So basically what this is going to turn into is your next television, believe it or not. That's what's going to replace LCD. That's going to replace OLED, is the inorganic light-emitting diode. So minis are down to 0.8 millimeters. Micro will be down to, like, say, below 50 micrometers. And that's going to be a long time before we get there yet. But there's no downside to LEDs. There's no viewing angle issues. They can do high dynamic range. They can refresh as fast as you want. Typical LED display is refreshing at 10,000 cycles per second, 10,000 hertz, using pulse width modulation. That's the only micro display demo that was at the show, and we took their word for it that actually was micro. Okay, so it has wide viewing angles, high dynamic range, wide color gamut, 120 hertz, but it's really hard to make. The yields are very, very low on these things because you're manufacturing something, I think it's 50 micrometers or smaller on a substrate, and if you get a couple of bad ones, forget it. It's dead. But Samsung apparently wants to get out of the business of making LCD panels, just like they're getting out of the business of making Blu-rays because there's no money in making the panels anymore. The profit's all gone. The Chinese LCD panel manufacturers have pretty much ensured that. So they're setting their sights on LED, and surprisingly, another company that's doing that is Apple. And Apple is in the process of building a micro LED fabbing facility in Cupertino to do small batches because their goal is to put LEDs in phones and tablets and computers. This is Samsung's smart LED video wall. Take a look at this all day long. This wall is about 10 feet. Peak brightness is about 1,600 nits, 1,600 candelas per square meter, which when the lights are on is great. In a dark room, wow, it really hurts your eyes. But people just stand there and stare at them like deer in the headlights. You can't get away from them. So how are you going to connect all this stuff? This is great. We're talking about 4K and 8K. Well, we need faster interfaces. The HDMI Forum always has a booth at CES. They're showing HDMI 2.1. That was announced almost 2 years ago. Nobody's making chips yet. The only company actually making the chips is Socionext, which is a Japanese company. But the compliance testing and certification is still ongoing. It's not going to be done till the end of the year. So when somebody says to you, we have a TV with HDMI 2.1, yeah, not really. It might be 2.1 at the jack, but it's not 2.1 past that. So we're not likely really to see that until Christmas time and maybe not even until next year. And then how are you going to connect 8K? Well, how about DisplayPort? They announced at the show, Visa announced version 2.0. 2.0 will, by waving a magic wand, increase the physical data rate from 8 gigabits a second to 24 gigabits a second per lane. So a total of 96 gigabits a second flowing over a display connector. If it doesn't explode, that'd be a pretty impressive trick. And it's probably going to be optical fiber because at that rate, you really can't use copper. So at NAB, numerous companies showed 8K streaming solutions. Here's Advantech showing a contribution encoder. Almost every one of these is using HEVC, the high efficiency video codec, H.265. Targeted bit rates are looking at 100 megabits a second to 200 megabits a second. So that's what it would be streaming. So if you're thinking to yourself, I like this 8K stuff. How can I get it into my house? Well, you're going to really need to be able to sustain 200 megabits a second, even with variable bit rate to make it work. And we all saw lots of demos of 120 hertz 4K and 8K. Yes, there's actually 120 hertz 8K cameras. And the data rate up there with 444 is about 192 gigabits a second without compression. So here you go, 8K 120 hertz decoded video. This is NHK. And here's HEVC, 4K 120 hertz. This is NTT. This is the old Japanese telephone company. They've gone way beyond that. We like to call this the hairdryer demo for obvious reasons. But these are prototypes. So what they're actually doing here is they're building a complete encoder-decoder, which they will then compress onto a board, maybe not one chip, but onto, let's say, one board, and then hopefully be able to sell that. Somebody will actually fab that chipset and sell it. And of course, we have 4K TV broadcasts. So WRAL in Raleigh, North Carolina has been broadcasting Ultra HD since 2018, last year, using the ATSC 3.0 standard. And the two people that are watching it said it looks great. So, because there's really no ATSC receivers out there, 3.0 receivers. In the 60 gig region, Paraso, who's been at the show many times, showed some really cool things. They are a chip manufacturer, fabulous company. They're in Toronto. They make their ICs over in Asia. They showed several 60 gig products at the Westgate. This is a gigabit wireless access point. You can already buy it. It's in room, range is about 30 feet. Really can't be any obstructions in there because it doesn't do well with things in the way. And believe it or not, at this frequency, 60 gigahertz radio waves collide with oxygen molecules. So who knew? Higher power can be over 150 feet with tracking antennas for, let's say, a Wi-Fi mesh. But what this gives you is a tri-band system. So you could have 60 gig to get to the system and then go out hardwired into your network, or convert to 2.4 or go to 5.
This is a Paraso reference design for an access point. In this demo, we have the Praso access point connected to 2 clients, one of them playing a 4K video, and the other tablet is we're going to showcase file transfer from the server onto the desktop here, and we're showcasing high throughput rate between the access point and the client, and this is all enabled through a 60 gig wireless link.
So the content is coming from this server,
That is correct.
going through the switch.
Going through the switch, and the switch is connected to an access point reference design.
Okay.
Which is again Praso based reference adapter.
Okay. And then you've got
And I've got
one laptop is streaming.
One laptop is streaming through a customer product that's already in the market.
Okay.
A 4K video.
And then simultaneously.
And simultaneously, the other file, I'm going to drop a file about 8 gig onto the desktop. And here you can see about 200 plus. This goes up to 250.
So right now we're streaming at what? What rate?
So this is about 2 gigabits per second.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah.
200 megabits a second streaming over a 60 gig link while you're also streaming 4K video into the same computer. That's impressive. Kisa. Kisa is some guys that left Silicon Image a number of years ago, had their fun doing HDMI, and they're into near field. So what that is, that tiny little chip there next to the dime is actually a 60 gig wireless link. Could be the transmitter, could be the receiver, with multiple antennas. So what they're thinking is that they can create a dock that I can put my phone in, and as long as I'm within 10 millimeter or so of the receiver, I've now got a full bandwidth connection up to 6 gigabits a second. And I can charge it, I can stream video from it, move files to it, whatever I want to do. So they have some really cool applications for it. One of the things they did is they streamed 8K video using 32 of these connections built into a custom PC in the back of the TV. So just by placing the 8K TV in a dock, bingo, it was connected. Power was applied to it, and you had all the connections you would need to stream video, surf the web, whatever you want to do.
What we have here is using plastic, as you saw before, we're using plastic now to be able to take a signal and run it in 360 degrees so that it can be completely rotational connector. So I'm going to turn this box on here and this box on here. This happens to be an industrial version of our product where you've got a lot of low-speed inputs coming in here, being aggregated into a single lane, running over this little cylinder that's inside of there through Kisa to this other one. And the blue you see here means it's on, but now you can see you've got the ability to have a connection that runs 360 degrees. The market for video walls is really moving towards these small LED panels and the frames that then you can put these LED panels and create any sort of configuration of video wall. One of the issues though is you've got to connect these things, and these are connected typically obviously with cables. But with our technology you don't have to use cables anymore. These can just snap off, and we've got a receiver here and a transmitter here. This is doing 3 gigabit per second V/1 from the cabinet to the panel, and you just snap it in and you're good to go.
So this eliminates a lot of wiring in the back plane of LED modules.
That's exactly right. And it makes installation and repair extremely easy. If you have a panel that goes out, you just replace it and you're done.
So 5G, as I said before, a lot of talk about it, not much product, mostly prototypes and hot air. Here's the D-Link unit that I showed you, where they told me I could not put it in the basement or the first floor or the second floor or whatever. I'd have to mount it outside the house, and even then it might not actually work because I'd need to be within about 50 feet of a node. So no explanations from anybody about how the bit rates vary with the actual 5G frequencies. So if you're running 5G in a current cellular band, it's not going to be any faster than 4G. Maybe marginally faster by better use of the spectrum and carrier allocation, but marginally better. So when you hear 1 gigabit a second upload and download speeds, they're talking about 60 gigahertz. They're talking about millimeter wave. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that's going to be very difficult to do, not the least of which, if it's a very foggy day, remember, those radio waves collide with oxygen molecules. Now, this is interesting. This is wireless power. demonstrated by Cube. It's a magnetic resonance wireless power system. You can activate lights and other devices just by placing them on a special pad. And at the same time, a mesh network is created between all the devices, kind of like a closed loop Wi-Fi network. So for an application, a charging tray could double as a room illumination and wireless access point. When you turn the light on, you simply set up the light like that, the light turns on, put your phone down, you can start charging your phone.
So we're creating basically a wireless power with a point-to-point network mesh structure. Magnetic resonance power, where we can give distance to products, penetrating between 12 to 15 inches. At the same time, we're building a mesh network within the wireless power that allows point-to-point communication between IoT devices. So what right here is a light bulb with a receiver built in right here. So when I place on top of a transmitter, so it will give power. Right now what you're seeing here is a 65 watt wireless power transmitter.
Okay.
So when I put it in here, as you can see, the light comes on. The power's on.
It's pretty cool. Bixby, Google, Alexa, Siri, that's not a law firm. Almost sounds like it. Samsung announced that they will support all 4 of these platforms on their 2019 televisions. And they've also added support for AirPlay, which is a major concession given the long history Samsung and Apple have of suing each other, which has been going on for years. I mean, it's the lawyers have made their entire careers, have never met anybody else. They just spend all their time in court suing each other. All 4 of these can run at the same time. So you can yell out Bixby, Google, Alexa, or Siri. I guess as you get older, you might say Alexel or Gooby or something like that, and then you really screw the system up. And as I said before, if Facebook gets their foot in the door, then we'll have Markey probably on there. Robots. Not as many this year. They were there. And some of them made sense, and some of them made no sense, like the robotic shark. I'm still trying to figure out the purpose of that one. Well, my daughter's a big Jaws fan, so she wants one of these. I saw robot sharks, fish, humanoids, vehicles, planes. The drones didn't generate that much buzz. We've seen them, we know what they can do. They're kind of like, so what? Some exhibits actually showcased robot intelligence. The robot was capable of making decisions on its own. Like this one, but this one still can't figure out how to do top spin. Anybody's ever played ping pong knows what a ping pong hustler is, right? They wait for you to make the mistake. Well, that's what this thing basically does. But if you hit it with a good top spin smash, you've killed it. I really can't explain this, but this thing kept me staring at it for 10 minutes. It sorts all these little colored objects into a tray at one end. At the other end, it takes them all out again and puts them back on the assembly line. And this just went on and on for hours. I have to say, I was very impressed by that. I'm sorry to say I was impressed by that. Some other robots. These guys were there like they were last year with the Merry Christmas logos on their chests singing jingle bells. There was a robotic goldfish. They turn upside down when the battery goes dead and die. These little guys were boogieing. I don't know what the purpose was, but I found them fascinating. This is a robotic health exam car that Panasonic came out with, and it's very important that they blink and smile. All robots need to do that. And this apparently is a robot that was converted from an overhead projector. And it apparently just wanders around the room all day long and doesn't bump into anything. Not sure what the purpose of that was. Hypervision, company in England, shows hologram video. They have actually just an X with LEDs in it, but by spinning it at really high speed and lightening up and refreshing quickly, they can create virtual images. They can create holograms. Here's what it looks like. It flickers like crazy. That's not my camera. And each one of those looks like a little propeller. That's all it is. So it's really cheap virtual reality. Or not virtual reality, it's really cheap hologram. And it is CES after all. I can't show you all the cool stuff. I have to show you some of the solar-powered night lights and the other crazy gadgets people come up with. Now RCA did a really neat thing. Although RCA is not RCA and hasn't been RCA for a long time, but RCA set up this exhibit, 100 years of RCA. And man, I found some stuff in there that I owned at one time. Notice the 45 RPM record player in the lower right, a reel-to-reel tape deck, very retro. Nice exhibit of their vintage electronics going back to the 30s. They're just a licensed brand now, distributed by Vox. So they've gone all over the country and asked people, if you have any old RCA stuff, we'd like to borrow it. And they're actually touring this around the country. Mark Shubin, if some of you know who he is, he would love this, man. He just loves the history end of it. Gigabyte showed a liquid-cooled PC. Yes, the entire computer is immersed in liquid, but it's not water. It's fluorine-based liquid, which keeps it really cool. It's a 291 2Go, 2 times 16 by Tesla P4 GPU server. That thing is really flying. It makes lots of bubbles. I would just put this in the room just because it looks cool. And if I could get fish to swim in there without killing it, I'd probably add them too. That is a Victrola on the right. I'm not really sure what the point of it is. The company makes it. It will play a record. But it's, I guess, a retro look that they're going for. On the right, that's wireless power. That company is showing those little LEDs just lying there, and they're actually coupling at relatively low frequencies. So it's not a lot of juice, but you just lay them on the table and they light right up. LG showed this thing called the Styler, which my wife fell in love with immediately. It's a cabinet you put your clothes in. Instead of having to go to the hotel room shower and turn it on and close the door and steam the place up, you just hang them in there and close it, and it gets all the wrinkles out immediately. And of course it's connected. It's IoT, so it can talk to your TV, your washer, dryer, refrigerator, vacuum, toaster, who knows what else, your doorbell. I just have this feeling all these things are going to conspire against us, right? Now, this is in the TCL booth. What this has to do with TCL TVs, I haven't got the slightest idea, except they're sponsoring this basketball team. And that's all he does all day long. He gets paid to do Harlem Globetrotter tricks with a basketball. Kodak is back again. Every year Kodak makes some crazy announcement, then they backtrack on it. So a few years ago, they announced they're going to bring back Super 8mm movie cameras. They had film, they had the camera, they had a lab that was going to process it. And I said, well, what happens when you process it? Well, we make a digital copy for you. I said, why don't I just shoot digital to begin with? Well, you get the film look. I said, well, what do I need the film look for? A digital camera is going to be much more resolution and way more dynamic range than I'm going to get out of the film. Well, that's gone now. They won't talk about it. But they did come up with an old school slide viewer. So great. I mean, that's probably costs like $1 to make. And then a old school reel, so you can actually scan your stuff in there. They also announced a few years ago they were going to bring back Ektachrome slide film. That never happened either. But it's always fun to go and remind them and say, where's that Super 8 camera? Where's the Ektachrome film? We don't know what you're talking about. Where's the pictures from last year? We don't know anything about that. Some of the great signs around the show, you got to love them. High Great, that's not a company that makes marijuana. Wearables for women of adventure. All right. Turn what you love into 8K. I'm not really big fan of turning everything I love into 8K. 8K and AI, that was like the whole theme of the show, so Huawei got that right. And then this company that had this thing called Puppy Homie, and I still can't figure out what it is. It was a Chinese company, obviously. And then giant pink rabbits. And if you tied one on at one of the parties at CES and came in the next morning, they might not blame you for wondering, whoa, what was I drinking last night? But this poor person had to stand there all day with that giant C-cell strapped to their knee and just keep banging that drum, and banging that drum, and banging that drum, and everybody come over and take a selfie with it. NanoCo. NanoCo is a manufacturer of cadmium-free quantum dots, and they use a formulation called indium phosphide, which is supposedly less harmful to the environment. They're based out of England. They had an unanticipated side benefit of this particular color that they developed. So they take quantum dot emission, color conversion filters, and they get this frequency of light, and it does really, really well growing vegetables indoors, which in England is a real challenge during the wintertime. So who did they hear from? Well, they heard from the Canadian Marijuana Growers Association that said, we would like to know more about this light, and we'd like to buy a bunch of these lights because we understand in our own tests that this thing grows pot faster than anything else on the market. So a TV technology now is being used to grow marijuana. Who could have seen that coming? If you have anybody have an Audi here, a recent late model Audi? Nobody? All of the lights in your Audi are now LEDs. Tail lights, Headlights, I think, they probably are LEDs by now. But what's interesting is Audi's using organic LEDs. The same thing that are in those LG TVs, they're using them for taillights in their cars to get that brilliant red out of it. Good thing they didn't put blue in there because it would only last about 5,000 hours and then they would stop working. So we're seeing OLEDs, and it's not necessarily a brilliant idea to do this, pardon the pun. I'm not sure what their motivation is, but we're seeing LEDs used in more parts of the car. So I bought a Mazda MX-5 a few years ago, and the only thing in my car, which is not an LED, oddly enough, is the interior dome light, which is probably the easiest thing in the world to convert to an LED. That's an incandescent bulb. But my headlamps, high beams, dashboard, everything, all LEDs. So that your television and your car will have a lot in common in the future. I mentioned wireless beer. I was not kidding. In the Qualcomm booth, they showed a concept for 5G connected beer, to which I said, you've obviously been drinking too much of the beer. What is 5G connected beer? Well, as it turns out, this concept is that you would have the bottles resting on pads that are connected to a local base station. As each bottle is removed, the sensor detects it and registers a change in inventory. And LTE is not short for light beer, and 5G does not mean 5 grams of carbohydrates. Some people actually came in and asked that and said, whoa, only 5 grams of carb? No, that's not what 5G means. Although I'm surprised somebody hasn't come up with that explanation for it. And of course, the US Postal Service was there again in the middle of all the Chinese trading companies. No games. One year they did skee ball, which I love. Anybody here play skee ball? They had skee ball set up. They had an Elvis impersonator. They had a Marilyn Monroe impersonator. You could win all kinds of cool things. This year they just set up a booth. It was kind of boring. One year they actually, their theme was the Fast and the Furious because they were sponsoring a race car. And I went in there and said, is that like when a mailman's trying to get away from a dog? Well, they didn't find that very funny. I wonder why. If you were a child of the 60s, the Canon booth, they had an authentic slot car setup. And I just thought this was so cool. Another way to kill time at the show is sit there and race cars. It's just obviously to show off the cameras. So I'm going to wrap up my presentation with some things to think about if I haven't confused you already. Number one, why do autonomous vehicles look so boxy and plain? I mean, cars look cool nowadays. I went to a Samsung press event last week outside a hotel where they had McLarens out there. Why does it have to look like a toaster? Is it dangerous to place so many displays in the driver's field of view? Yes, it is. And we see this every year at the show, but we're not accounting for the nut behind the wheel. What's next? AI voices that argue with you when you won't stop and ask for directions? Would you fly in an autonomous helicopter? I'll pass. Why a mad rush to 8K? Well, more in a moment. Is there a practical limit to the size of a television? When will mini and micro LED displays replace the LCD, and will they also replace OLED technology? Yes, they will. It's going to take a while, and it's not going to be the mini that does it, although the mini is going to replace things like projectors, high brightness projectors, all the outdoor signage. But minis the pitch is too coarse to be able to replace a television with it. It's going to take micro to do that. And when that happens, it's going to be everything from a TV down to your smartphone. Is it possible to build a 360-degree computer display? Yes. I just showed you it can be done. I think 5 of those will do it, of that Samsung display. Why is virtual reality taking so long to get off the ground? Probably because it's a solution in search of a problem right now. How come our display interfaces are still too slow? Okay, we're trying to sell people Ferraris, and those people live on gravel roads with potholes. So why can't we improve the display interface speeds? Is 5G really the next big thing or mostly hype? I say mostly hype for the time being. How many voice recognition systems do we really need? Who has Alexa here? Okay, put the hands up high. I need to get a real good count. Okay, who has Bixby? That's the Samsung thing, okay. Who has OK Google or Google Assistant? Okay, and how about Siri? Almost as many Siris as Alexas. It's probably we only need one, but everybody wants to have their own. By the way, did you know that your Alexa in the future will be able to detect a change in your voice if you sound sick, like you're hoarse or hungover? It might say, oh, would you like me to get something from the drugstore for you? Oh, I'll ship this immediately using a drone. So it'll be able to detect your physical condition. CES is becoming an enormous lifestyle showroom. It really is, because the hardware is so cheap now and anybody can make it. It's really more about what you do with it and not so much the gadgets. Are we going to cut the cords to everything electronic? Yeah, probably at some point we'll be able to do everything with wireless. Why would anyone turn what they love into 8K? I happen to like coconut cream pie. I don't need to turn that into 8K. Who or what is Puppy Homie anyway? I asked somebody in the booth and I still not ever got an explanation for this. What would David Sarnoff say about today's RCA? It's just a brand. I mean, there's nothing left of the company. And admit it, slot cars were really cool back in the day. They really were. Anybody play with slot cars when they were younger? They were cool, man. I thought that was great that Canon did that. So, before I go, did I forget to tell you, oh, very quickly, 8K. The reason 8K is taking off, there was another part of this presentation I did for somebody else, is that the Chinese TV manufacturers, having effectively killed all the profit in 4K panel manufacturing, are now gearing up to make 8K panels because they make a profit on it. So that's why the TVs are coming to market. There's no other reason for it, just we're making it because we can. It requires a Gen 10.5 or a Gen 11 fab, and the glass is like 11 by 9 feet, the mother glass. Then that can be cut more efficiently into sizes starting at 65 inches and going up from there. But there is one very important thing. I forgot to tell you what it was. There we go.
Meet LG Homebrew. Our first ever beer maker. Now you can make and enjoy your own cold, tasty beer in the comfort of your own home with little more than a simple touch of a button. Cheers to all of you.
That was the highlight of the LG television press conference. So with that, that is my summation. I'll stick by it. Maybe I missed a few things here and there, but I think I did a pretty good job. And like I said, the future is closing fast. So go out there and get your 5G wireless connected beer and your 8K TVs with pink rabbits, and maybe someday you'll figure out what Puppy Homie is. And thank you very much for sitting through all of it.
All right, thank you, Peter. Entertaining as always. I know my problem is I have both Alexa and Siri, and I'll come out of the closet in the morning at 6 o'clock and go, Siri, oh no, Alexa, what's the weather today? So I know that happens. And there was one other thing I was going to make a comment on. I can't think of what it was, so I'll let that go. Anyway, now we'd like to turn the program over to David Ivory. Oh, before we do that, I wanted to thank the, I'm sorry, what's your department? MSP. The MSP, the Multimedia Studio Mass Media Studies program, who's providing our stream for tonight. So I'm going to turn the program over to David Ivory, who's heads up the recording program here, and he'll give us a little description of what's going on, and then we're going to go on a tour of their facility.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for coming and having your meeting here this evening. We are always happy to have a great group like yourselves and a technical group as well to be visiting our facility. A real quick about the studio. This is a year old. We opened this a year ago. It's basically a culmination of basically our mothership concept. So we have three latest, which I'll show you on our tour, latest studios of all the latest digital gear and all the latest of all the digital recording technology. The reason for this room is to kind of bring it all together. A lot of us are old enough to remember recording with tape and analog consoles, and the concept of this room was to have the best of both worlds. This is the best analog mixer pretty much ever made. Same with the tape machines over there, and same with some of the processing EQs and compressors that are here. But in addition to that, we have the latest in Pro Tools technology, all the latest plugins, so that way the student, for the very first time, you can actually hear the difference between analog and digital. And you can actually hear and get relevance of actually what that sounds like. And moreover, you can get to understand how signal flow works. A lot of times we have a problem with students when they do everything in what we call the box. You don't really know where that EQ came from or where that microphone or compressor came from. Well, here it's very obvious, and you have to kind of learn that. And that's one of the biggest issues that we find for employers that take students from an audio program is signal flow. So we try to teach that really a lot right here. So this is a state-of-the-art listening room. It's equipped real quick. I'll just give you some of the technical. These are Augsburger three-way monitors, stereo monitors. There's 700-watt subs, 18-inch, and then there's 400 watts for the mids and 400 watts for the high, and it's a digital time align. So in other words, as we know, low frequencies travel slower than high frequencies. So in that machine room is a digital processor that slows down the high-end frequencies and allows the low-end frequencies to catch up. So when the music comes out to you here, it's aligned, all the frequencies. These are Genelec. The latest in the Genelec technology. As some of you may know, Genelec is one of the premier speaker systems that's out. And this is what their new system is. It's called the Ones. And they are computer operated, meaning that they come with a specialized microphone that is calibrated to the speakers. You set up the microphone here. It runs tones and sweeps and EQs each speaker for up to 7 different listening spaces. So I could EQ those stereo speakers to where you are and you would hear perfect stereo. I could hit a button, I would hear perfect stereo here. So they're very, very cool. And of course we have the quintessential bad speaker Yamaha NS10s, because you always need some reference, point of reference. The SSL 9000K, 56 inputs. So we have 56 digital returns, or with just one patch of a cable, we can run 1 through 24 on the Studer and bring that up. And as we also can lock all the machines. So we can lock the computer-based program, the DAW, we can lock the 2-inch machine, and we can lock Pro Tools all working together all at the same time. So it's pretty crazy. It's pretty cool. We have the way it was designed, that all this is a separate building. So in other words, if this particular room was able to be dropped in water, it would float. There's a separate air conditioning system for all the different rooms. As I said, these walls are not touching those walls. These walls are not touching those walls. It goes all the way up to the ceiling. It's pretty crazy design. That's why you see strips in every doorway, because you can see that's where the wall is separated. And that's part of the construction idea. And again, it's a complete symmetrical room. So you've put a line down the center. The left side sees exactly what the right side sees, which is perfect for audio listening. Cutting room in there, very isolated for drums, voice, whatever. And also all these rooms you can record in. You can record in that room, and as well as in the green room we have recording, and as well as the television studio, which I'll take you to in just a minute. And the television studio is 24 channels that are lined up into here, into the patch bay right there, all copper, not on a network, so there's no delay. Should have saw me pushing that to the college. 300 feet of 24 pair Mogami cable. And it was $5,000 before they got the ends wired onto it. But fortunately we did that. So just the other day we had a concert where we had a choir and a conductor and a piano player in the television studio, and we had a full band in here, and we ran a straight wire so it wasn't on the network, and the conductor was able to conduct in the television studio the band in here, and we were able to mesh that all together. We're doing several concerts, bringing in the MSP students along with our SRT students, because as we know, as professionals, we can teach how to record, and yes, you're recording and it's just that way, but if you're going to really do it in a live environment, you know, people were yelling, moving, changing, things are flying all over the place, the speed of the game increases dramatically, so we try to do these live concerts and have all the different students participate in their various skills and kind of work together to get a real feel for actually how it works in the real world. So that's kind of like the whole idea of the program, is not to have audio people and video people, but to have professional people doing it. We even have the business class promoting the shows that we end up doing. So that's kind of the concept. Moving forward, we are looking into doing a lot more work with MSP, with drones, with even editing on your iPhone, things that are actually coming up, and trying to work with that right now. So if you don't mind, if you want to take a little walk, I'd be more than happy to show you around. And if there's any questions, just shout them out as we go along. And again, I want to thank Peter and the SMPTE organization for coming out tonight. Thank you very much.
As soon as the tour is done, we'll just adjourn. So thank you all for coming. And we don't know exactly what's happening in May, but we are working on a program.